I am a millionaire and gave my unlimited credit card to a homeless woman. Hours later, what she did brought me to tears. I've always believed that money could buy happiness. After all, isn't that what everyone says? If only I had more money, I'd be happy. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not true, not even close. My name is Alexander Rothschild, and I'm what people call a hotel tycoon. I inherited a fortune that most people can only dream of, and I've spent my life surrounded by luxury and excess. My mansion in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, is a testament to that wealth. A sprawling estate with manicured gardens, a private vineyard, and more rooms than I can count. It's the kind of place that makes jaws drop and eyes widen. And yet, as I stand on my balcony overlooking the colorful rooftops of this picturesque town, I feel empty. It's a beautiful evening in late spring. The sun is setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink that would make any artist weep. The scent of blooming bougainvillea wafts up from the garden below, and I can hear the distant chiming of church bells. It's perfect, too perfect, and I hate it. I take a sip of my 30-year-old scotch, savoring the burn as it slides down my throat. It's a small sensation, a reminder that I'm still alive, still feeling something. But it's not enough. It's never enough. I've tried everything to fill this void inside me. I've bought yachts, private jets, exotic cars. I've dated supermodels and actresses. I've thrown parties that would make Gatsby blush. And yet here I am, 45 years old, standing alone on my balcony, feeling like the loneliest man in the world. My phone buzzes, and I glance at it disinterestedly. It's probably my assistant, reminding me about tomorrow's board meeting or some charity gala I'm supposed to attend. I ignore it. I can't bear the thought of putting on another fake smile, of pretending to care about stock prices or fundraising goals. Instead, I decide to go for a walk. It's not something I do often. Usually, I have a driver take me everywhere. But tonight, I need to feel the cobblestones under my feet, to breathe in the night air, to remind myself that I'm part of this world and not just observing it from my ivory tower. I make my way down to the street, nodding at my security guard as I pass. He looks surprised to see me leaving on foot, but knows better than to question me. As soon as I step outside the gates of my property, I feel a weight lift from my shoulders. Here, in the narrow, winding streets of San Miguel, I'm just another person. Not a tycoon, not an heir, just a man taking an evening stroll. The town is alive with energy. Music spills out from cantinas. The aroma of street food fills the air, and everywhere I look, I see people laughing, talking, living. It's a stark contrast to the sterile perfection of my mansion, and I find myself drawn to it like a moth to a flame. I wander aimlessly, letting my feet carry me where they will. I pass by the Jardine Principal, the town's main square, where couples are dancing to the music of a mariachi band. I see families enjoying ice cream, friends sharing jokes over beers, tourists marveling at the beautiful architecture. Everyone seems so content, so at peace with their lives. I envy them. As I turn down a quieter street, something catches my eye. Or rather, someone. In the dim light of a street lamp, I see a woman sitting on the curb. She's not young, probably in her mid-40s like me, but there's something about her that makes me stop in my tracks. She's wearing clothes that have seen better days, and her long dark hair is tangled and unkempt, but it's her eyes that captivate me. Even from a distance, I can see a depth of emotion in them that takes my breath away. Without thinking, I find myself walking towards her. As I get closer, I can see that she's hunched over, her arms wrapped around her knees as if trying to make herself smaller. She looks up as I approach, and for a moment, our eyes meet. In that instant, I feel something shift inside me. It's as if a key has turned in a lock I didn't even know existed. "Are you okay?" I hear myself asking. The words sound foreign to my ears. When was the last time I genuinely asked someone that question? She looks at me warily, probably wondering why a man in an expensive suit is talking to her. "I'm fine," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. But I can hear the tremor in it, see the way her hands shake slightly. I should walk away. This isn't my problem. I have my own issues to deal with. But something keeps me rooted to the spot. Maybe it's the emptiness inside me, desperate for something, anything to fill it. Or maybe it's the look in her eyes, a look that seems to mirror my own inner turmoil. Without fully understanding why, I reach into my pocket and pull out my wallet. I take out my Platinum credit card, the one with no spending limit, and hold it out to her. "Take it," I say, surprising myself with the intensity in my voice. "Use it for the next 24 hours. Buy whatever you need, whatever you want." She stares at the card, then at me, her expression a mix of disbelief and suspicion. "Why?" she asks, and it's a fair question. Why indeed? Because I struggle to find the words. How can I explain something I don't understand myself? Because I have everything, and yet I have nothing. And you have nothing, and yet I think you might have everything. It doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't. But as the words leave my mouth, I realize they're true. This woman, with her worn clothes and tangled hair, has awakened something in me that all my wealth and possessions never could. She hesitates for a moment longer, then slowly reaches out and takes the card. Our fingers brush as she does, and I feel a jolt of electricity run through me. She must feel it too, because she gasps softly. "Thank you," she says, her voice stronger now. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I reply. "Just use it wisely." I turn to leave, my mind reeling from what I've just done. But before I can take more than a few steps, I hear her voice again. "My name is Elena," she calls out. I stop and look back at her. She's standing now, the streetlight illuminating her face. And in that moment I see a beauty that has nothing to do with physical appearance. It's a beauty that comes from within, from a spirit that has endured hardship and come out stronger for it. "I'm Alexander," I reply, my voice catching in my throat. As I walk away, leaving Elena with my credit card and a world of possibilities, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this impulsive act might lead to something meaningful, something real. Little did I know that this encounter would be the beginning of a journey that would change my life forever. A journey that would teach me the true meaning of wealth, of love, and of family. But that night, as I made my way back to my mansion, all I knew was that for the first time in as long as I could remember, the void inside me didn't feel quite so empty. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying the encounter with Elena, her haunting eyes and the electricity I felt when our hands touched. As the first rays of sunlight crept through my bedroom windows, I found myself wondering what she would do with the credit card. Would she buy herself new clothes? Book a luxurious hotel room? Perhaps treat herself to a gourmet meal at one of San Miguel's finest restaurants? I tried to push the thoughts aside as I went about my morning routine. I had a busy day ahead. Meetings with investors, conference calls with hotel managers, the usual whirlwind of activity that comes with running a global hospitality empire. But no matter how hard I tried to focus, my thoughts kept drifting back to Elena. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I called my personal assistant, Maria. "Maria, I need you to check the activity on my Platinum card," I said, trying to keep my voice casual, the one I always keep as a backup. "Of course, Mr. Rothschild," she replied, her tone professional as always. "May I ask why? Has there been unauthorized use?" I hesitated. How could I explain what I'd done without sounding completely insane? "No, nothing like that. I lent it to someone. I just want to make sure it's being used." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear Maria's raised eyebrow. But to her credit, she didn't question me further. "I'll look into it right away, sir." As I waited for her to get back to me, I paced my office, unable to sit still. What if Elena hadn't used the card at all? What if she'd thought it was some kind of trick and had thrown it away? Or worse, what if she'd maxed it out on frivolous purchases? I wasn't sure which scenario worried me more. Finally, my phone rang. "Mr. Rothschild," Maria's voice came through, sounding slightly perplexed. "I've checked the card activity as you requested." "And?" I prompted, my heart racing. "Well, sir, there have been several transactions, but they're not what I expected." I gripped the phone tighter. "Go on." "The first purchase was at a local grocery store. A large order of non-perishable food items and hygiene products. Then there was a transaction at a clothing store, but the items purchased were mostly children's clothes and shoes." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. Eleanor wasn't using the card for herself. She was buying supplies for others in need. "There's more," Maria continued. "There was a significant purchase at a local pharmacy, mostly over-the-counter medications and first aid supplies. And then, well, this is the part that confused me, sir. There was a large transfer made to a bank account. My breath caught in my throat. How large? Nearly $500,000, sir. I sat down heavily in my chair, my mind reeling. $500,000. That was a life-changing amount of money for most people, but Elena hadn't kept it for herself. She'd transferred it to someone else. The account holder, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Can you find out who it is? I heard the clacking of keys as Maria worked her magic. After a moment, she spoke again. The account belongs to a Sofia Hernandez. She's 25 years old, lives in Mexico City. Sofia Hernandez. The name meant nothing to me, but clearly she meant everything to Eleanor. A sister, perhaps, or a daughter, I breathed, the realization hitting me like a thunderbolt. She must be Eleanor's daughter. Sir? Maria's confused voice brought me back to reality. Never mind, I said quickly. Thank you, Maria. That's all I needed. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, my mind whirling with this new information. Eleanor, the woman I had found sitting on a curb, had just been handed unlimited financial power, and instead of using it for herself, she had chosen to help others, to provide for those in need, to secure a future for her daughter. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Admiration. Pure, unadulterated admiration for another human being. Elena's actions had shown a level of selflessness and compassion that I couldn't even fathom. I found myself wondering about her story. What had led her to that street corner where I found her? How had she become separated from her daughter? And why, despite her obvious hardships, had she retained such a generous spirit? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my office, I made a decision. I couldn't let this end here. I needed to know more about Elena. I needed to understand what drove her, what had shaped her into the remarkable woman she clearly was. With a newfound sense of purpose, I picked up my phone again. Maria, I said when she answered, I need you to find someone for me. Her name is Elena and she's someone I met recently in San Miguel. I don't have much information, but I believe she has a daughter named Sofia Hernandez, 25 years old, living in Mexico City. Of course, Mr. Rothschild, Maria replied, her tone neutral despite the unusual request. I'll start looking right away. Is there anything else you can tell me that might help? I closed my eyes, trying to remember every detail of my encounter with Elena. She's probably in her mid-40s, long dark hair, brown eyes. She was living on the street when I met her. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Maria spoke again, her voice was softer, tinged with concern. Mr. Rothschild, are you sure about this? It sounds rather unlike you. I couldn't help but smile at that. It was unlike me. The Alexander Rothschild of a week ago wouldn't have given Elena a second glance, let alone gone to such lengths to find her again. But something had changed. I had changed. I'm sure, Maria, I said firmly. This is important to me. More important than anything has been in a very long time. I understand, sir, she replied, and I could hear the determination in her voice. I'll do everything I can to find her. As I hung up the phone, I felt a surge of anticipation. For the first time in years, I was excited about something. Excited about the possibility of seeing Elena again, of learning her story, of understanding the woman who had managed to awaken something long dormant within me. I walked to the window, looking out over the colorful rooftops of San Miguel as the last rays of sunlight painted them in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere out there, Elena was using my credit card to change lives, to make a difference in a way I never had, despite all my wealth. And somewhere out there was the key to unlocking the mystery of who she was and why she had affected me so profoundly. As I watched the sun disappear behind the horizon, I made a silent promise to myself and to Elena. I would find her. And when I did, I would learn from her. I would understand what true wealth really meant. Little did I know that this quest to find Elena would lead me down a path I never expected, unraveling secrets long buried and forcing me to confront truths about myself and my family that I never could have imagined. But in that moment, as night fell over San Miguel de Allende, all I felt was hope. Hope for answers, hope for meaning, and hope for a chance to fill the void that had plagued me for so long. The journey ahead would be challenging, surprising, and at times painful, but it would also be the most rewarding experience of my life. And it all started with a simple act of kindness, on a quiet street corner, proving that sometimes the greatest riches come from the most unexpected places. Days turned into weeks as Maria worked tirelessly to track down Elena. I threw myself into my work, trying to distract myself from the growing anticipation, but my heart wasn't in it. Board meetings that once held my rapt attention now seemed tedious. Negotiations that used to thrill me felt hollow. My entire world had shifted on its axis, and I was struggling to find my footing. It was on a particularly muggy afternoon when Maria finally burst into my office, her usually impeccable composure slightly ruffled. "Mr. Rothschild," she said, slightly out of breath, "I think I've found her." I nearly knocked over my chair in my haste to stand up. "Eleanor? You found Eleanor?" Maria nodded, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. "It wasn't easy, sir. She's been off the grid for years, but I managed to trace her through her daughter, Sophia." My heart raced as Maria laid out a file on my desk. I opened it with trembling hands, eager for any information about the woman who had consumed my thoughts for weeks. "Elena Vasquez," I read aloud, my fingers tracing over a grainy photo of a younger Elena. Even then, her eyes held that same depth that had captivated me on that fateful night. Born in Mexico City, 47 years old. As I read through the file, a story began to emerge. Elena had once been a promising young artist, her paintings celebrated in local galleries. She had fallen in love young with a man named Carlos Hernandez. They had a daughter, Sophia, when Elena was just 22. But then, the trail went cold. There were gaps in Elena's history, years where she seemed to vanish entirely. What had happened during those lost years? What had led her from being a rising star in the art world to living on the streets of San Miguel de Allende? "There's more, sir," Maria said softly, interrupting my thoughts. She hesitated, then continued. "When I was searching for information about Elena, I came across something unexpected." I looked up, noticing the uncharacteristic nervousness in Maria's demeanor. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I found some old correspondence, letters between Elena and your mother." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "My mother?" I repeated, sure I had misheard. "That's impossible. My mother never knew Elena." But even as I said the words, a memory stirred. A half-forgotten conversation overheard as a child, my mother's voice tight with anger, mentioning a woman named Eleanor. I had dismissed it at the time, too wrapped up in my own world to pay attention to my mother's affairs. "The letters were hidden in an old safe in your family's summer house," Maria explained. "I only found them because I was doing a thorough background check on Elena and her potential connections to your family." With shaking hands, I reached for the stack of letters Maria held out to me. The paper was yellowed with age, my mother's elegant handwriting instantly recognizable. As I began to read, I felt as though the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. The letters spoke of a past I had never known existed. My mother wrote of meeting Elena at an art exhibition, of being impressed by her talent and her spirit. But as I read on, the tone of the letters changed. My mother's words became colder, more calculating. She wrote of a young man, me, who was being led astray by an unsuitable woman. She spoke of the measures she would take to ensure the family's reputation remained untarnished. And in the final letter, dated just a few months before Sophia's birth, my mother issued an ultimatum. I felt the blood drain from my face as I read the last lines. "You will leave. You will never contact Alexander again. If you do, I will ensure that you and your child never know a moment's peace. The Rothschild name and fortune will be protected at all costs." The letter fell from my numb fingers. My mind was reeling, trying to reconcile this new information with the carefully constructed narrative of my past. Had I known Elena before? Had we been in love? And my mother? Had she really gone to such lengths to separate us? "Mr. Rothschild?" Maria's concerned voice broke through my shocked haze. "Are you all right?" I looked up at her, feeling as though I was seeing the world through new eyes. "I'm not sure," I answered honestly. I think I need to take a trip to the summer house." Maria nodded understandingly. "I'll make the arrangements right away." As she left to prepare for my impromptu journey, I sank back into my chair, my mind whirling with questions. Who was Elena to me? What had really happened all those years ago? And why couldn't I remember any of it? The next few hours passed in a blur. Before I knew it, I was on my private jet, heading towards the sprawling Rothschild summer estate on the coast. As the familiar landscape came into view, I felt a sense of trepidation. This place, once a source of happy childhood memories, now held secrets I wasn't sure I was ready to uncover. The house was just as I remembered it, a grand, colonial-style mansion overlooking the sea. But as I walked through the silent halls, it felt different, colder, as though the weight of hidden truths hung in the air. I made my way to my mother's old study, a room I had rarely been allowed to enter as a child. The safe was hidden behind a painting, a beautiful landscape that I now realized bore a striking resemblance to Eleanor's early work. With trembling hands, I opened the safe. Inside, I found more letters, photographs, and a small leather-bound journal. As I began to read, the missing pieces of my past slowly fell into place. The journal was my mother's, and in it, she detailed her plot to separate me from Elena. She wrote of her fear that I would throw away my future for a penniless artist, of her determination to protect the Rothschild legacy at all costs. And she wrote of the guilt that plagued her in the years that followed. But it was a photograph that truly shattered my world. It showed a younger version of myself, arms wrapped around Elena, both of us smiling at the camera with the kind of joy I hadn't felt in years. And there, barely visible, was the slight swell of Elena's stomach. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Sophia wasn't just Elena's daughter. She was mine. I sank to the floor, the photograph clutched in my hand, as waves of shock, anger, and grief washed over me. How could my mother have done this? How could she have kept my own child from me? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the study, I made a decision. I would find Elena and Sophia. I would make things right, no matter the cost. The Rothschild legacy my mother had been so desperate to protect meant nothing compared to the family I had lost. With a newfound determination, I gathered the letters, journal, and photographs. These were the keys to my past, and perhaps to my future. As I left the summer house, I felt as though I was leaving behind more than just a building. I was leaving behind the man I had been, the man shaped by lies and manipulations. The Alexander Rothschild who boarded the plane back to San Miguel de Allende was a different man from the one who had arrived. I was a man with a mission, a man determined to right the wrongs of the past and forge a new future. As the plane took off, I looked out the window at the fading coastline. Somewhere out there were Elena and Sophia, my family, and I would move heaven and earth to find them, to explain, to make amends. The journey ahead would be challenging, filled with obstacles I couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in my life, I felt truly alive. The void that had plagued me for so long was now filled with purpose. And as I clutched the photograph of Elena and me, I made a silent promise. I would find them, I would make things right, and together we would rewrite the story that should have been ours all along. The flight back to San Miguel de Allende felt interminable. My mind raced with the revelations from the summer house, each new piece of information sending shockwaves through my carefully constructed world. I was a father. I had a daughter I'd never known. And the woman I'd impulsively helped on the street corner was so much more than a stranger. She was the love I'd forgotten, the future I'd been denied. As soon as the plane touched down, I was on the phone to Maria. "I need you to intensify the search," I said, my voice tight with urgency. "Elena and Sophia, they're not just anyone. They're my family." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Maria spoke, her voice was gentle, understanding. "I suspected as much, Mr. Rothschild. The resemblance between you and Sophia in the old photographs, it was unmistakable." Of course, she had figured it out. Maria had always been perceptive, always 3 steps ahead. It was why I trusted her with my life, and now with finding my family. "I've already reached out to some contacts in Mexico City," she continued. "Sophia's last known address was an apartment near the university, but she moved out several months ago. We're trying to track her current location." I nodded, even though Maria couldn't see me. "And Eleanor? Still no concrete leads, I'm afraid. But now that we know more about her past, we have new avenues to explore. I'm looking into old art galleries that might have showcased her work, former colleagues, anyone who might have known her before she disappeared." The word hung heavy between us. Disappeared. What had happened to Elena after my mother's ultimatum? How had she gone from a promising young artist to a woman living on the streets? The questions gnawed at me, fueling my determination to find her. "Thank you, Maria," I said softly. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "It's my pleasure, Mr. Rothschild, and if I may say so, it's good to see you passionate about something again." As I ended the call, her words echoed in my mind. Passion. When was the last time I'd felt truly passionate about anything? My hotels, my business empire, they had become routine, a way to pass the time and accumulate more wealth I didn't need. But this search for Elena and Sophia ignited something in me I thought had long since died. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. I threw myself into the search with a fervor that surprised even me. By day, I pored over the information Maria and her team uncovered, tracing Elena and Sophia's movements over the years. By night, I lost myself in the old letters and photographs, trying to piece together the memories that had been stolen from me. I learned that after leaving me, Elena had struggled to make ends meet as a single mother. Her art, once so full of life and color, had taken on a darker tone. Galleries that had once clamored for her work now turned her away. Eventually, she'd been forced to take on odd jobs to support herself and Sophia. Sophia, for her part, had grown into a brilliant young woman. School records showed she excelled in her studies, earning scholarships that allowed her to attend university. She'd studied social work, driven by a desire to help others that must have come from Elena. But the trail went cold after Sophia's graduation. It was as if both mother and daughter had vanished into thin air. The more I learned about them, the more my heart ached for the years we'd lost, for the family we could have been. One evening, as I sat in my study surrounded by papers and photographs, a memory surfaced, fragmented and hazy but undeniably real. Elena and I, walking hand in hand through a park in Mexico City. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. We were laughing about something, our bodies close, our hearts closer. "I want to paint this moment," Elena had said, her eyes shining with love and creativity. "I want to capture this feeling forever." "Why paint it when we can live it?" I had replied, pulling her close for a kiss. The memory faded, leaving me with a bittersweet ache in my chest. How could I have forgotten such a moment? How could I have let my mother erase Elena from my life so completely? Determined to reclaim more of my lost past, I decided to visit the park from my memory. It was a long shot, but I hoped that being there might trigger more recollections. The next day, I found myself wandering the paths of Chapultepec Park, the largest urban park in Mexico City. As I walked, flashes of memory assaulted me. Elena sketching by the lake, the two of us sharing a picnic under a massive ahuehuete tree, stolen kisses on moonlit nights. I was so lost in these rediscovered memories that I almost missed her. A woman sitting on a bench, her hand moving swiftly across a sketchpad. Her hair was streaked with grey now, and lines of care etched her face, but I would know her anywhere. Elena. My heart pounding, I approached her slowly, afraid that if I moved too quickly, she might disappear like a mirage. As I drew closer, I could see what she was sketching. It was the same view we had admired all those years ago, the one she had wanted to paint. "Elena?" I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up, her eyes widening in shock as she recognized me. The sketchpad fell from her hands, scattering pencils across the ground. "Alexander?" she breathed, her voice a mix of disbelief and, was that fear? For a moment we just stared at each other, the years between us seeming to melt away. Then, without warning, Elena stood and began to gather her things hurriedly. "Elena, wait," I pleaded, reaching out to her. "Please, I've been looking for you. I need to talk to you." She paused, conflict clear on her face. "Alexander, I can't do this. Not now, not after everything." "Everything?" I echoed, confusion and hurt warring within me. "Elena, I don't understand. I've only just remembered. My mother, Your mother," Elena cut me off, her voice sharp with old pain. "Yes, I remember your mother very well. She made it quite clear what would happen if I ever tried to contact you again." The bitterness in her voice was like a knife to my heart. "Elena, please," I begged. "I didn't know, I swear I didn't know about any of it until recently. About you, about Sophia." At the mention of our daughter's name, Elena's face paled. "How do you know about Sophia?" "I've been searching for both of you," I explained, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I found letters, photographs. Elena, why didn't you tell me?" She's my daughter too. Elena's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and pain. Your daughter? Alexander, you gave up any right to call her that when you let your mother drive us away. Do you have any idea what we've been through? Her words hit me like a physical blow. I wanted to protest, to explain that I hadn't known, that I would have moved heaven and earth to be with them if I had. But the anguish in Elena's eyes stopped me cold. I'm sorry, I said softly, the words feeling woefully inadequate. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am so sorry. Please, Elena, give me a chance to make things right. Let me explain. For a long moment, Elena said nothing. She stood there, clutching her sketchpad to her chest like a shield, her eyes searching my face. I held my breath, silently pleading with her to give me a chance. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly. I can't do this here, she said, her voice tired. Not in the open like this. If you really want to talk, meet me at the Café Tacuba tomorrow at noon. We can discuss things there. Relief flooded through me. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't even acceptance, but it was a start. A chance to begin to bridge the chasm that had been forced between us. Thank you, I said, resisting the urge to reach out and touch her. I'll be there. I promise. Eleanor nodded curtly, then turned and walked away. I watched her go, my heart heavy with the weight of lost years and unspoken words. As I made my way back to my hotel, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I had found Elena, but the reunion was far from the joyous occasion I had imagined. The pain and bitterness I had seen in her eyes haunted me. What had she and Sophia endured because of my mother's actions, because of my own obliviousness? Tomorrow, I vowed, I would begin to make amends. Tomorrow I would start to rebuild the bridges that had been burned. Tomorrow I would take the first step towards reclaiming the family I had lost. As night fell over Mexico City, I stood at my hotel window, looking out over the sprawling metropolis. Somewhere out there was Sophia, the daughter I had never known. And somewhere out there, Elena was grappling with the sudden reappearance of a past she had tried to leave behind. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The Café Tacuba was a historic gem in the heart of Mexico City, its walls adorned with murals depicting scenes from Mexican history. As I sat at a corner table, nervously fidgeting with my coffee cup, I couldn't help but feel that I too was on the cusp of uncovering my own personal history. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see Elena enter. She paused for a moment, her eyes scanning the room before landing on me. Even after all these years, the sight of her took my breath away. She moved with a grace that belied the hardships she must have endured, her head held high as she navigated through the tables. "Alexander," she said softly as she sat down across from me. "Elena," I replied, my voice catching slightly. "Thank you for coming." I wasn't sure you would," she sighed, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns on the tablecloth. "I almost didn't, but I realized that after all this time, I deserve some answers, and maybe you do too." A waiter approached, and Elena ordered a cup of chamomile tea. We sat in awkward silence until her drink arrived, neither of us quite sure where to begin. Finally, I took a deep breath and plunged in. "Elena, I want you to know that I had no idea about what my mother did. I didn't know about her ultimatum, about Sophia, about any of it. It's no excuse, I know, but I swear to you, if I had known—" "You would have what, Alexander?" Elena interrupted, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Defied your mother? Thrown away your fortune? Your future? We both know that's not who you were back then." Her words stung, but I couldn't deny the truth in them. The Alexander of the past had been weak, easily manipulated by his mother's ambitions and his own insecurities. "You're right," I admitted. "I was a different person then, but Elena, losing you, it changed me. Even though I couldn't remember the details, there was always this void in my life. Nothing ever felt right, felt complete." Elena's expression softened slightly. "What changed? Why now, after all these years?" I told her about our chance encounter on the street, how her selfless actions with my credit card had awakened something in me. I explained about finding the letters, about the memories that had come flooding back. As I spoke, I could see the conflict in Elena's eyes. The pain of the past warred with a flicker of the connection we had once shared. "I never stopped loving you, you know," she said quietly when I finished. "Even when I hated you for abandoning us, a part of me still loved you." Her words were like a balm to my soul, but they also twisted the knife of guilt deeper into my heart. Elena, I am so sorry for everything you and Sophia went through. Can you tell me about her, about your lives? Elena took a sip of her tea, her eyes distant as she began to speak. She told me of the early years, of struggling to make ends meet while raising a child alone, of the nights spent painting after Sophia had gone to bed, trying desperately to reignite the passion that had once defined her art. She spoke of Sophia's childhood, of a bright, curious girl who asked questions about everything, including the father she had never known. What did you tell her about me? I asked, dreading the answer. Elena met my gaze steadily. The truth, that I had loved you very much, but that circumstances had kept us apart. I never vilified you, Alexander. I couldn't bring myself to taint her image of her father, even if I thought you had chosen to leave us. Relief and gratitude washed over me. Thank you, I whispered. I don't deserve your kindness. It wasn't kindness, Elena replied. It was hope, I suppose. Hope that someday, somehow, things might be different. As she continued her story, I learned of the hardships they had faced, of the times when Elena had to choose between buying food and paying rent, of the scholarships that had allowed Sophia to pursue her education, and the pride Elena felt when our daughter graduated with honors. She's studying for her master's degree now, Elena said, a smile of maternal pride lighting up her face. Social work. She wants to help children who come from difficult backgrounds. Like her, I said softly. Elena nodded. She's amazing, Alexander. Strong, compassionate, determined. She's the best of both of us. I want to meet her, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. If she's willing, if you're willing. Elena's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. I don't know, Alexander. This is a lot for her to process, for both of us. I understand, I said quickly. I don't want to pressure either of you, but Elena, I've missed so much of her life, of your lives. If there's any chance at all that we could what? Elena asked, her voice gentle but firm. Be a family? Alexander, it's been 25 years. We're not the same people we were back then. I know, I admitted, but maybe we could try to get to know who we are now. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Elena. I'm not even asking for a second chance. I'm just asking for an opportunity to be part of your lives, in whatever way you're comfortable with. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her fingers absently tracing the rim of her teacup. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I need time, Alexander. It's overwhelming. I need to talk to Sophia to figure out how I feel about all of this. I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. Of course, I understand completely. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, Elena. Whether it takes days, weeks, or years, I'll be here. She looked up at me then, and for the first time since we'd reunited, I saw a glimmer of the Elena I had fallen in love with all those years ago. You've changed, she said softly. For the better, I hope, I replied with a small smile. Elena stood up, gathering her purse. I should go. I'll be in touch, Alexander. When I'm ready. When we're ready. As she turned to leave, I called out, Elena? She paused, looking back at me. Thank you for listening, for telling me about Sophia, for everything. She nodded once, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth, and then she was gone. I sat there long after she left, my coffee growing cold, my mind replaying every word, every gesture of our conversation. It wasn't the reunion I had hoped for, but it was a start, a fragile bridge spanning the chasm of lost years and missed opportunities. As I finally left the cafe, stepping out into the bustling streets of Mexico City, I felt a sense of hope I hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead would be long and likely difficult, but for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight for something truly meaningful. I pulled out my phone and dialed Maria's number. Cancel all my appointments for the next month, I said when she answered. I'm staying in Mexico City, so I have a family to get to know. As I ended the call, I looked up at the sky, a gentle rain beginning to fall. It felt cleansing, washing away the sins of the past and nourishing the seeds of a possible future. A future that, for the first time in 25 years, included the possibility of love, of family, of redemption. The journey ahead was uncertain, but as I hailed a taxi, I knew one thing for sure. I was exactly where I needed to be, and I would do whatever it took to earn my place in Elena and Sophia's lives, no matter how long it took. The days following my conversation with Elena at Café Tacuba stretched into weeks. I remained in Mexico City, renting a modest apartment instead of staying at one of my luxury hotels. I wanted to experience the city as Elena and Sophia had, not as a privileged tycoon, but as someone trying to make a life in this vibrant, chaotic metropolis. Every morning, I would wake up hoping to see a message from Elena. Every night I would go to bed disappointed, but still clinging to hope. To keep myself occupied, I threw myself into learning about the city and its people. I walked the streets Elena and Sophia must have walked, visited the parks they might have played in, and even attempted to take an art class, remembering Elena's passion for painting. It was during one of these aimless wanderings that I found myself in front of a small community center in a working-class neighborhood. A colorful mural adorned its walls, depicting scenes of families and communities coming together. Something about it drew me in, and before I knew it, I was inside, surrounded by the buzz of activity. "Can I help you, senor?" a young woman asked, her warm smile instantly putting me at ease. I'm not sure," I admitted. "I was just walking by and something about this place caught my attention." Her smile widened. "That's often how people find us. I'm Lucia. I'm one of the social workers here." "Workers? Are you interested in our programs?" As Lucia gave me a tour of the center, explaining their various initiatives, from after-school programs for at-risk youth to job training for single mothers, I felt a stirring of something I hadn't experienced in years, a desire to make a real difference. "This is amazing work you're doing," I said as we finished the tour. "How can I help?" Lucia looked surprised but pleased. "Well, we're always in need of volunteers. Do you have any particular skills you'd like to share?" I chuckled ruefully. "I'm afraid my skills are mostly in the realm of corporate finance and hotel management. Not very useful here, I imagine." "On the contrary," Lucia said, her eyes lighting up. "We have a program teaching basic financial literacy and entrepreneurship to women trying to start small businesses. Your expertise could be invaluable." And just like that, I found myself with a purpose. 3 times a week, I would come to the center and teach. At first, it was awkward. I was used to boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations, not classrooms full of eager but nervous women. But as the days passed, I found myself looking forward to these sessions more and more. It was during one of these classes, about a month after my meeting with Elena, that my world shifted once again. I was in the middle of explaining the concept of profit margins when I saw her, Sophia. She was standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and... was that anger? My voice trailed off mid-sentence, and the class turned to see what had captured my attention. Sophia stepped into the room, her posture tense, but her voice steady as she addressed me. "Hello, Alexander. Or should I call you Dad?" The room fell silent. I could feel the eyes of my students darting between us, sensing the tension. "Sophia," I breathed, hardly daring to believe she was really there. How did you find me?" "Mom told me about your meeting," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "I've been doing my internship here at the center. Lucia mentioned a new volunteer named Alexander who was teaching financial literacy. It wasn't hard to put the pieces together." I nodded, my heart racing. "I'm glad you're here. I've wanted to meet you for so long." Sophia's expression softened slightly, but there was still a wariness in her eyes. "Can we talk? Privately?" I turned to my class, apologizing for the interruption and promising to make up the lesson. As we left the room, I could hear the excited whispers behind us. No doubt this would be the subject of much discussion in the coming days. Sophia led me to a small courtyard at the back of the center. For a long moment we just stood there taking each other in. I could see Elena in her, the same dark, expressive eyes, the same graceful way of moving. But there was something else too, a strength and determination that I recognized from my own reflection. "Why are you here?" Sophia finally asked, breaking the silence. "Why now, after all these years?" I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I only recently learned about you, about what really happened with your mother and me. I know it's no excuse, but I swear to you, if I had known..." "You would have what?" Sophia interrupted, echoing her mother's words from weeks ago. "Come rushing to our rescue? Swept us away to your life of luxury?" "I don't know," I admitted honestly. I'd like to think I would have, but the truth is, I was a different person back then. Weaker, more easily manipulated. But Sophia, the moment I learned about you, about the life you and your mother had, it changed everything. Sophia's expression was unreadable. And what do you want now? To play happy families? To assuage your guilt? Her words stung, but I couldn't blame her for her skepticism. I want to know you, I said simply. I want to be a part of your life, if you'll let me. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I'm hoping you'll give me a chance to show you who I am now, not who I was then. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. Do you know what it was like growing up without a father? Always wondering why you weren't there? What I had done wrong? Sophia, no, I said, my heart breaking. You did nothing wrong. The fault was entirely mine, and my mother's. Abuela, Sophia said, the word sounding strange on her tongue. Mom told me about her role in all of this. It's a lot to process. I nodded, understanding all too well. I know, and I'm so sorry for all the pain my family has caused you and your mother. If I could go back and change things, I would. But I can't. All I can do is try to make amends now, if you'll let me. Sophia looked at me then, really looked at me as if trying to read the truth in my eyes. I'm not ready to call you Dad, she said finally. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready for that, but I think I'd like to get to know you, Alexander. Relief and joy washed over me. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't acceptance, but it was a start, a chance. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. That's more than I could have hoped for. Sophia nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. So, financial literacy, huh? Bit of a step down from running a hotel empire. I chuckled, grateful for the break in tension. You'd be surprised. I think I'm learning more from these women than they are from me. That's usually how it works, Sophia said, and for a moment I saw a flash of the passionate social worker she was becoming. The real experts are the ones living the experiences we're trying to help with. As we continued to talk, the sun slowly setting over the Mexico City skyline, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead would still be long and challenging. There were years of hurt and misunderstanding to overcome, trust to be rebuilt, relationships to be redefined. But for the first time it felt possible. When we finally parted ways, Sophia hesitated for a moment before giving me a quick, awkward hug. I'll talk to Mom, she said. Maybe we can have dinner sometime, the three of us. As I watched her walk away, her words echoing in my mind, I felt a surge of hope. The bridges between us were still fragile, the barriers not fully broken down. But we had made a start. And sometimes a start is all you need to change everything. The evening of our first family dinner arrived with a mix of anticipation and nervousness that left my stomach in knots. Eleanor had chosen a small, unpretentious restaurant in her neighborhood, a far cry from the upscale establishments I was used to, but perfect for the occasion. As I approached the entrance, I saw them waiting outside, Eleanor and Sophia, my long-lost family, looking as nervous as I felt. Alexander, Eleanor greeted me with a small smile. You made it. I wouldn't miss this for the world, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Sophia nodded in acknowledgement, her expression a careful mask of neutrality. Shall we go in? The interior of the restaurant was warm and inviting, with colorful murals adorning the walls and the aroma of home-cooked Mexican cuisine filling the air. As we settled into our seats, an awkward silence fell over the table. How do you begin a conversation that's been 25 years in the making? Elena, ever the brave one, broke the ice. So Alexander, Sophia tells me you've been volunteering at the community center. That must be different for you. I chuckled, grateful for the opening. It's been eye-opening, to say the least. I think I've learned more in the past few weeks than I have in years of running my business. Sophia's eyebrow quirked up in interest. Oh? How so? As I began to share stories about my experiences at the center, the challenges faced by the women I was teaching, their resilience and creativity in the face of adversity, I saw something shift in Sophia's eyes. The wariness began to fade, replaced by a glimmer of respect. That's actually really cool, she admitted. I never would have expected a hotel tycoon to get his hands dirty in community work. Well, I never expected to either, I said with a self-deprecating smile. But it's been transformative. I feel like I'm finally doing something meaningful with my life. Elena's eyes met mine across the table, a look of understanding passing between us. She knew, perhaps better than anyone, how empty my life of wealth and privilege had been. As the evening progressed and the food arrived, delicious, authentic dishes that put my usual fancy meals to shame, the conversation began to flow more naturally. Sophia shared stories about her studies and her passion for social work, her eyes lighting up as she talked about the changes she hoped to make in the world. "You get that from your mother," I said softly, looking at Elena with admiration. She always had a way of seeing the best in people, of wanting to make the world a better place. Eleanor blushed slightly, a hint of the young woman I had fallen in love with shining through. "I think Sophia's drive comes from both of us, Alexander. Your determination, your ability to see the big picture. I see that in her, too." Sophia looked between us, a mix of emotions playing across her face. "It's strange," she said after a moment, "hearing you talk about each other like this. For so long you were just abstract concepts to me. A mother who rarely spoke of the past, a father who was nothing more than a blank space in my life. And now? I prompted gently when she trailed off. She shook her head as if trying to clear her thoughts. "Now, I don't know what to think. You're both so real, flawed but real." Elena reached out, placing her hand over Sophia's. "We are, Mija, and I'm so sorry for all the years of silence, for not giving you the full picture of your father, of our past." "I understand why you did it, Mum," Sophia said, squeezing her mother's hand. "You were protecting me. Both of you were victims of circumstances beyond your control." I felt a lump form in my throat at her words. "Sophia, you have every right to be angry with me. I may not have known about you, but my actions, my weakness in standing up to my mother, led to all of this." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "I was angry for a long time. At you, at Abuela, even at Mom sometimes, but I'm tired of being angry. I want to move forward, to see if we can build something new from all of this." Her words were like a balm to my soul, a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. "I want that too," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "More than anything." Elena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "So do I," she whispered. As the evening drew to a close, I felt a shift in the energy between us. The awkwardness had faded, replaced by a tentative warmth. We weren't a perfect family, far from it, but we were making progress. As we stood outside the restaurant preparing to say our goodbyes, Sophia surprised me by initiating a hug. It was brief, still a bit awkward, but it felt like a monumental step forward. "This was nice," she said as she pulled away. "Maybe we could do it again sometime." "I'd like that very much," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Eleanor stepped forward then, her expression soft. "Thank you for tonight, Alexander. For everything." On an impulse, I reached out and took her hand, marveling at how familiar it still felt after all these years. "Thank you for giving me this chance. Both of you." As I watched them walk away, Elena's arm around Sophia's shoulders, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead would still be challenging. There were years of hurt to overcome, trust to rebuild, and relationships to redefine. But for the first time in decades, I felt truly hopeful about the future. Back in my apartment, I found myself looking at the city skyline with new eyes. Mexico City, once just another stop in my global business empire, had become the center of my world. It was here that I had found my lost family, here that I was rediscovering my purpose. I thought about the community center, about the women I was teaching and the lives I was touching in ways I never had before. I thought about Sophia, her passion for social work and her desire to make a difference. And I thought about Elena, the love I had lost and found again. An idea began to form in my mind, a way to combine my business acumen with this newfound sense of purpose, a way to create lasting change, not just for my family, but for countless others like them. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a sense of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to bridge the gaps between us. But for now, I allowed myself to bask in the warmth of this small victory. A family dinner, a step towards healing, a glimmer of the future we might build together. The void that had plagued me for so long was slowly being filled, not with material possessions or business successes, but with something far more valuable: love, purpose, and the promise of redemption. 1 year had passed since that fateful night when I gave my credit card to Elena on the streets of San Miguel de Allende. As I stood on the balcony of my new apartment in Mexico City, watching the sun rise over the sprawling metropolis, I marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. The Rothschild Foundation for Community Empowerment was no longer just an idea, but a thriving reality. Using my business acumen and the connections I'd made through the community center, we had established a network of programs across Mexico, focusing on education, job training, and microloans for small businesses. Sophia had been instrumental in shaping the Foundation's mission, her insight and passion bringing a depth to our work that I could never have achieved alone. Working alongside my daughter, watching her grow into a formidable advocate for social justice, filled me with a pride I had never known in all my years of corporate success. And Eleanor. Eleanor had become my partner in every sense of the word. Our relationship had rekindled slowly, cautiously, both of us wary of the pain of the past. But as we worked together on the Foundation, as we shared in the joys and challenges of reconnecting with Sophia, we found our way back to each other. A soft touch on my arm pulled me from my reverie. Eleanor stood beside me, her hair tousled from sleep, a soft smile on her face. "Good morning," she murmured, leaning into me. "You're up early." I wrapped an arm around her, marveling at how right it felt to have her by my side. Just thinking about everything that's happened this past year, sometimes I still can't believe it's real. Elena's laugh was warm against my chest. "Oh, it's real, all right. All the late nights working on Foundation projects, the family therapy sessions, Sophia's impassioned speeches about social reform, very real." I chuckled, remembering some of our more heated family discussions. We had faced our share of challenges as we navigated this new relationship. There had been arguments, tears, moments when it seemed the weight of the past might be too much to overcome. But we had persevered, each of us committed to building something beautiful from the ashes of what we had lost. "Speaking of Sophia," Eleanor said, a mischievous glint in her eye, "she called last night after you went to bed. She's bringing someone to dinner tonight." My eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Someone, as in a young man she's been seeing," Elena confirmed. "A fellow social work student." She sounded nervous about introducing him to us. A wave of emotions washed over me: pride, excitement, and yes, a twinge of the overprotective father I never got to be when Sophia was growing up. "Well," I said, trying to keep my voice light, "I suppose I'll have to dust off my intimidating tycoon persona for the occasion." Elena swatted my arm playfully. "Don't you dare, Alexander Rothschild. We've worked too hard to build this relationship with our daughter. For you to scare off the first boy she's willing to introduce to us." I held up my hands in surrender, laughing. All right. I'll be on my best behavior, promise." As we stood there watching the city come to life below us, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. A year ago I had been a man adrift, surrounded by wealth and success but empty inside. Now I had found a purpose, a family, a love I thought I had lost forever. "I was thinking," I said slowly, an idea that had been forming for weeks finally crystallizing. "What if we took a trip back to San Miguel de Allende? All of us. You, me, Sophia, and her young man if she wants. We could visit that street corner where everything changed." Elena looked up at me, her eyes shining with understanding. "A pilgrimage of sorts. Back to where our story began again." I nodded. "And maybe we could make it official there." "If you're ready, if you want to." "Alexander Rothschild," Elena said, her voice trembling slightly, "are you trying to propose to me?" I turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in mine. "Elena Vasquez, I loved you 25 years ago, and I love you now more than ever. Will you marry me? Will you help me continue to build this beautiful, messy, incredible life we've started?" Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks as she nodded, pulling me into a fierce embrace. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Later that evening, as we shared the news with Sophia and met the young man who had captured her heart, I looked around at my family, the one I had lost and found and built anew, and felt a sense of completion I had never known before. The void that had haunted me for so long was gone, filled now with love, purpose and the promise of a future brighter than any I could have imagined. As we raised our glasses in a toast, I silently thanked whatever twist of fate had led me to that street corner in San Miguel de Allende, to that moment of impulsive generosity that had changed everything. To new beginnings, I said, my voice thick with emotion. To family, Elena added, her eyes shining with love. To changing the world, Sophia chimed in, her passion for making a difference evident in every word. As our glasses clinked together, I knew that this moment, these people, this love, was the true meaning of wealth. And I vowed to spend the rest of my life cherishing it, nurturing it, and paying it forward to all those we could help through our work. The story of the Rothschild family was no longer one of cold ambition and lost connections. It was a story of redemption, of second chances, of the transformative power of love and purpose. And as we sat there laughing and sharing and dreaming of the future, I knew that the best chapters were still to come.